Next on our agenda is Superintendent's report, but I'd like to take a few minutes just to say this to all of our audience, and the ones here and the ones at home and all of District 5. In a time when our entire educational environment has been turned upside down by an unprecedented pandemic, it's truly sad and unfortunate that there are so many people that choose to tear down our schools and criticize our superintendent, our teachers, our staff, school board members, and most of all, students. Learning loss, mental and social problems, anxiety, and general fear have gripped our entire country, not just our district. And parents are worried, and as they well should be. Hopefully, we can all step back and realize our teachers, our staff, our superintendent, board members, and especially, again, our students should be afforded grace, and we all need to do our part to bring our schools back to the level of safety and learning that is expected of District 5. And I just want to say before you do your superintendent's report, which so much has to do with this, that this board is committed to working together along with the superintendent and his staff to ensure our students are safe and learning every day. And I turn this over to you, but that was a heartfelt message from this board. I believe in this board. I believe in this administration. And it truly is hard times that we're dealing with mental, social, academic loss. So we all are committed to doing what is right. So Dr. Ross, let's hear from you and all the good things you're doing to address any needs that we see.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I want to first give thanks to our foundation for recognizing our teachers with those grants. They have an amazing impact on the ground. Our new director, Lynn Collins, is a retired school psychologist, and a reminder of, we know of the mental health needs in our schools, how we have experts that work day in and day out. It is National School Counseling Week. You know, growing up, you used to say guidance counselor, but now it's school counselors because of the roles they take on mental health. And I think it's good to take this opportunity to think about our counselors and how much they carry on their shoulders. They hear a lot of stories, a lot of issues that are going on with our students, and they take that home with them each and every day. Our teachers and staff are carrying those stories. And so it's good to think about the people who take care of the people. And so we are certainly very proud of all of those who work in mental health, including our school counselors. As we've said from the beginning of my tenure, even as interim superintendent, we're a system working and aligning the answers to three questions. Why do we do this work? How do we do this work? And what are the outcomes that we create? We believe that the feedback from our parents, our staff, our community is important to make sure that this system is flowing. And so starting with our why became to love and grow our students. We talked about ways in which we would identify how every child feels loved on in our campuses. And we've used the question, how are the children, as a way to identify that feeling of every child feeling loved. We know that this is a vision that we're working every day towards. We're certainly not there yet. Tonight is an opportunity to share what we're doing in that regard. We do that through our mission statement. And our mission statement is very encompassing. I want to thank our strategic planning team as we pass this as our mission statement. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on first off tonight is the notion of a safe and secure learning environment. Recent events at Irmo High School has brought this to the forefront of the goal or the mission of providing a safe, secure learning environment. I reported to Irmo High School, and at about 3:08 p.m., students began a protest where they left the school for a walkout. This event was over at around 3:40, but in between those times, I saw things that I was very concerned about. There was safety concerns that were very evident from that walkout. However, I think what was missed was the point of why these students began to walk out in the beginning. While I was very concerned about the safety issues of having those students unsupervised out and about, there was a reason that the students did the walkout in the beginning, and I think that was missed in the stories. This morning, or this afternoon, the administration and our executive team, we met with the student government of Irmo High School. These are the elected bodies to represent the students. Ms. Whipple is their sponsor. She was gracious enough to let us sit in and listen to them. And they shared their concerns for safety and security at their school. But chief among them was the notion of sexual harassment in school. And so this is not in your prepared packet. This was added after the conversation with those students today, but I felt it was important, even though it didn't make it to the packet, to share what they told me today at 1 o'clock. And there was specific concerns about how their voices are heard within schools, especially dealing with issues of sexual harassment. I think it's important for all of us to be reminded and understand that we are compliant and have to be compliant to our Title IX policies about discriminations, especially on the basis of sex. And when each school has a Title IX investigator, someone who is trained to look into these situations and deal with them appropriately. What was shared with us today was the need for the district to be involved with it, specifically 2 students who shared personal stories with me today. Dr. Harris and his team, we called in our district Title IX investigator to actually investigate those 2 and any others that have been coming up. I think it's important to note that when addressing these in schools, we do have policies surrounding not only this for our employees, but for our students. Dr. Turner serves as our compliance officer for our employees, and Ms. Kelly Brown, our student services officer, addresses those issues for our students. When we were looking at what we could do in terms of communicating what has been done, we are reminded that we can't get into any individual's discipline file or talk about their educational records. However, under directory information, I do want to make a point today, Madam Chair, members of the board, that especially for those students that we met with today at 1 o'clock, and that is that they were very specific about a specific case that, again, we can't really get into the details, but under the provisions of basically with consultation with legal advice, directory information can be made public. And I can say that the student that was brought to our attention in that classroom is not a student at Irmo High School. That's all I can say in terms of specifics, but I'd like to speak in generalities, and that we ask you to lift your voice when there's ever a situation you feel uncomfortable, you're not safe and secure on our campuses, and that there are people watching people. So if that's not met at the school level, then you feel comfortable letting your parents know, they can contact the district. If it's not handled at the district level, then my advisory is the board. But we also have the state that protects our students and the federal government under the Office of Civil Rights. So there's layers of protection. But we are we take this very serious. There will be more investigations that the central office will do in terms of these allegations that have been brought to us. We maintain the due process rights of all students, but we also want to move forward to make sure that anyone who has feel like they've been discriminated on the basis of race, color, religion, nationality, disability, or sexual orientation, gender status, any student who feels like they've been harassed sexually, that we have a mechanism to provide safety for you. So I felt, again, did not have that meeting, didn't really even totally understand everything because of Friday it was such about safety and security. But when things calm down and you can hear the students talk, I wanted to include this in our remarks today. But we do have an issue in terms of their concerns with safety and security, dealing with fights and disrespect, disruptions in the hallways. And I'm very solution-oriented. I am aware of many of the things on Facebook and I think, or social media. And I think some people need a person to blame, and that's me. As the superintendent, if it happens on my watch, I take full responsibility. And so I will stand with full responsibility for anything that happens negatively on our campus. But I tell you this, I will make some corrections, and I will put in place some solutions. I don't spend a lot of time on the blame because there is no time for blame, but I do think there are opportunities for solutions. And I just want to thank the executive team, the administration at Irmo High School, the staff at Irmo High School, for coming together with some solutions. We met this morning at 8 o'clock with the faculty and staff. This is following a meeting with the admin on Friday afternoon, meeting with the registration team and the instructional team on Sunday, working with HR on Saturday. So we are prepared to present with you today with our initial plan that we will continue to work on throughout the night and into tomorrow, so that when we are in school at Irmo High School on Wednesday, we'll see a noticeable difference. It's a philosophy for us about how we deal with discipline. When we talk about discipline, I really put it down into 4 areas. We give every teacher a set of students. And for some of our students in that classroom, they're in the green. There are no interventions needed. When the teacher says this is what needs to be done, that's exactly what that student does. And we have those students that are kind of in the yellow. Yellow is that they need teacher interventions. This is some of us were maybe in yellow. I know I was. We would get off task. The teacher would say, get back on task, and that student would comply. What we're seeing now more and more are orange. The teacher asks the student to get on task, and the student does not. And we would call an administrator to deal with that. We would call in the principal. We would call in the assistant principal. But now, and we've seen this prior to COVID, but we're seeing this increase. We're dealing with red, where there are more and more students, where even the school administration is struggling to address. And when your assistant principals and principals are dealing with so many students who are in that red, who are in that crisis mode, then these orange, the students that are in that orange phase, they go unaddressed. It's hard to meet those needs. If we were to multiply any school in their situations of orange by 2 or 3-fold, I think we would have more than just one school. So I want to make this very clear. I don't think this is an Irmo problem at all. I've been walking those halls, meeting with that faculty and staff. I've talked with those students. I've been fortunate to operate a nationally acclaimed school. And Irmo High School is no different from that nationally acclaimed and that state award-winning school. But Irmo High has a lot of challenges because Irmo, South Carolina has some challenges. And as a public school, our community comes into the school. And standing there are the community members who decide to be educators that are going to meet those needs. And sometimes they get a negative hit or slander or because they decided to be there. They decided to meet those kids where they were. But again, it's not an Irmo High School. Irmo High School serves its community, all of its community. And so when we look at what can we do as a district to support a school that has great people working there, trying their best to meet the varied needs that really don't exist there's a lot of need in our district, don't get me wrong, but the specific skills that are needed to address the needs here are much higher in our eastern district than it is in the west. And being as a principal who was at Chapin, I understand we have a lot of needs out there that need to be addressed, but they don't manifest as we see here. And so starting Wednesday, we are setting some ground rules that parents will be aware of when we do our parent forum tomorrow at 6. And one of those is just to make sure that every student is properly identified with an ID, and every student that is in that building, they're in class or they have a pass, where they're supposed to be, or they have identified that someone is aware of where they are. We've just, as a board, you've put $50 million into a new building because you toured its current building. You understand the labyrinth that East Wing is. And so until we get it improved, where we have a lot of line of sights and security measures, we need that pass system in place. But then there's something that we need to do for those kids in that orange phase, those kids that may not be getting their needs met. Some have asked and emailed, Dr. Ross, you need to go zero tolerance, not really aware of the current realities of school today. There are some students, by virtue of their identified status with IEPs or 504, are not subject to zero tolerance. And so there's a lot of factors that impact who can be in a school and why. Some may disagree. Say, Dr. Ross, you said there's no bad children. It's just children in bad circumstances. And I stand by that. And so instead of using punishment, which I don't believe changes any behavior, I would like to use discipline. And those are two different things. Punishment means to pay. Discipline means to teach. Where do we teach these skills to be able to cope with the situations that these students are going through that's causing the reactions like that? Well, I thought about, where does a yellow jacket go to mature? Yellow jackets mature in a nest. And so starting Wednesday, there will be the nest at Irmo High School. The nest is a place where we meet the expectations. We ask children to meet our expectations because we meet their needs. This is a place where we look at the root causes of the negative behavior to reduce the suspensions and expulsions, but increase their ability to have positive school behaviors and create a positive school climate. In the nest, we have been able to staff this. We added some FTEs. I want to thank our HR department. We added a math and science teacher on Saturday. Dr. Harris has brought forth for our packet clinical counselors pending approval tonight, they'll be available for this opportunity. We have our teacher scheduled, special education services, and so we're very proud of a place where we can address those needs. The NEST has three main goals: to increase instructional time by addressing behaviors that interrupt teaching and learning, to improve communication, problem-solving, behavior, and conflict management skills, and to create alternatives to suspensions and expulsion while addressing underlying challenges that neglect behaviors. You do not tolerate disruption. Again, I'll say that. We do not tolerate disruption. Do not tolerate fighting or disrespect. But I believe as educators, we can stand to treat it. We can try to address it and meet those needs. Madam Chair, members of the board, we'll be hosting a community and parent town hall. That'll be tomorrow, February 8th at 6 o'clock. And you can go to our website and social media for information, which will give out more details of this plan, the changes that will be at Irmo High School on Wednesday, information on the NEST, and more information about safety and security. We've heard from our staff, we've heard from our students, and now we'd like to hear from our parents and our community. And the question was, well, Dr. Ross, if this is February 8th at 6, how can you put our ideas into action before the morning comes? And I believe the power is in the pivot. We will always change and improve the system, but I think it's now. I told my staff I believe in the power of the pivot. If I fall off the boat, just keep throwing me stuff until something afloats. And right now I'm asking that we were planning this since the fall. It's time to put it into action. It's time to learn from it and continue to improve. So with that, I'd like to end this section before we go on to the next section of the superintendent's report. Friday evening, when I left Irmo pretty late, I saw the registrar there, Michelle McCoy, and she had already begun to work on building this new school within a school. And as I walked past her door, she stopped me and she said, Dr. Ross, I'm a graduate of this school, and I care much about Irmo High School and its name. And she said, Dr. Ross, we got this. And I was very encouraged that it was a staff member who believed in this. And I asked that our community believe in those who are there on the ground to make this happen. Support them. They're up against a tough job. And if you love Irmo, this is the time it needs you most. Another staff member who was there Sunday, they got there at lunchtime right after church, and they stayed till about 6 o'clock till we ran them off yesterday to build a school within a school because they know these students need the nest. And on one of their desks, they brought me a picture. I dare not take it out, but this is the first graduating class of Irmo High School. Dates back to 28. There were 8 members of the class, and Deborah Carlson's grandmother was a valedictorian. And when I think about this, she passed at 105, still talking about Irmo High School. That was her pride, and I remember asking Mr. Whipple, what is so special about Irmo High School? And he said, it's the pride. And when you think about the legacy of this school, its first graduating class, and the class that will graduate this year, I see why those staff members came there and worked late nights, weekends, why they dedicate so much for this school. Irmo is more than the building. For them, it's the blood, it's family, and that's where that pride comes from. This morning, I dropped a child off at Irmo Elementary, Irmo Middle, and I can't wait to drop mine off at Irmo High. And so I'm very proud of this. It will not be perfect, but it'll be a step towards it. So before we move on, I'd like to take any questions about safety and security at Irmo High School.
Ms. Hines?
Thank you, Dr. Ross, for that overview. I have several questions. So Chair Hammond, just direct me in how appropriate to ask them. I think that they're all important. So I would like to be able to ask them. I'm going to try to organize my thoughts in them to get from the main question down to where we are today at Irmo High School. But the first question, and one that I've had a lot of parents ask me, and community members and teachers, is what is the purpose of the Academy for Success? We've been told that alternative schools are meant to provide an alternative learning environment for at-risk students who have difficulty finding success in a traditional learning environment. So my question is that not how it operates, and how do we identify students to go to the Academy for Success? And this leads down to stair-step questions, and I apologize for that. But I guess I'm trying to figure out, how do we get kids to the Academy for Success? And my end question after several is going to be, how are we creating a school within the school, which is essentially an Academy for Success at Irmo? So I'm not sure how you want to get there.
Ms. Hines, that's good. Let him do that first one,
Okay.
if that builds in steps, if that'd be good, because I want everybody to have time for questions.
And I have your stair step. So in terms of the role of the academy, Dr. Harris, you would like to respond?
Certainly. I think you have the information that you shared is pretty important. It is an opportunity for students to have time and space away from their traditional home school, for example, and have opportunity to redirect, to gain refocus. They get there not only through a means of discipline in terms of the transfer from one school to the other, but many students go there by choice. So both of those avenues are available for students. But again, for various and sundry reasons, whether they're academically behind and they need an opportunity to regain the credits, that's an opportunity. Again, it may be based on some violation of a student code of conduct. A student may be transitioning in from a different school or school district and need that opportunity prior to that nest idea concept, if you will, prior to going to his or her home school. So there are various number of ways in which a student might be assigned to or transferred to the academy, and those occur, quite frankly, throughout the course of the school year. In terms of how they earn their way back to their home school, quite frankly. They are there for a designated period of time, and they earn their way back to their home schools after having been assigned.
Dr. Ross, would you like to add to that first question?
And so also, one of the questions were, in terms of, I want to make sure, how do they come back, or how they?
Well, so one of the things that we've heard from many people, and a lot of this is playing out, and I don't know what is fact from fiction, but I've heard that 38 students were released at the same time from the Academy for Success and back to Irmo High School, and that led to the events of last Monday and Tuesday. Not Friday. And so, and from what and I'm not trying to violate any student identifying information at all. I'm just trying to understand the process, because from what it seems like from a parent's point of view at Irmo High School is 38 students were released from the Academy for Success at one time, returned to Irmo High School, and havoc ensued. And they are now being placed in an Academy for Success within Irmo High School on campus. And so I'm just trying to understand that that thought process.
I think you're looking at what's the difference, I think in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, right, I mean, how did 38 students get released at one time? And then also, you know, what is the rationale of keeping the identified students in the
I
same
get it.
location? Because it feels like to me, from some of the things that I have heard, is the perception of taking students that are at risk or troubled from the Academy for Success and then creating their own bubble within Irmo High School. Are we perpetuating a stereotype? And why aren't those schools within the school being created at all of our high schools? So I'm just trying to understand where we're coming from.
That's a great point. I want to respond to that. I think what's important to know is that legally, their home school is Irmo High School. And so the Academy for Success at Spring Hill is never supposed to be a permanent placement, always temporary. So students are coming back at some point. How they get back through their contract, they're always coming back. Students on choice can say that they're coming back tomorrow. So when we talk about the academy or services or the nest at Irmo High School, it's saying that we're not trying to have you leave Irmo. They saw success, and I've walked the halls of the Academy for Success. It's amazing. A student you'll see in one setting do one set of behaviors. They move to another setting, and you can't believe it's the same child. And I've seen that firsthand. And I just wondered, what if we could create that at their home school? The notion is that they're not permanently in the nest, that being in the nest is a way to meet those specific needs. But you'll see as we talked about, you know, what we want at every high school. You're right. When we talked about expectation coaches, we piloted that in Irmo, at Irmo Middle and Irmo High. We heard from our principals. Everyone said this should be at all schools. So as we bring this budget together, we're going to be talking about ways to kind of meet these needs so that we can have services like this at all schools. Another thing is an operational piece, and Dr. Harris, please correct me if I'm wrong. We have about 100 seats at the Academy for Success before we would have to move into Spring Hill. So we don't have, indefinite room for the number of referrals that we would get there as well. And so 9 schools for 100 seats. I don't know if 38 is the right number, but if we just take 38, you can say that's 38% is going to one school. But I don't know if that's the right number. I'm just saying as an example. Dr. Harris?
Yeah, I don't know the number off the top of my head without looking specifically, but it was, I will share this as I think it's appropriate also for the question and the community to know about how they transition back. Any student, whether it's Irmo High School or any school, that, as I stated earlier, they earn their way back. And at a clean, what we will consider a clean break at the end of a semester, students who have done well academically, students who have had done well behaviorally, have good attendance, they are reviewed by the principal at the academy, the receiving principal or administrator, as well as the parents and student who are all there collectively prior to any return, looking at the student and looking at what that student has accomplished prior to that student being released back to his or her home school. So there's a very thorough review before any student, 1 or 38 students, whatever the number may be, there's a very thorough review of those students prior to them returning to their home school. So I did want to make that known as well, that it's not just an arbitrary, okay, you get to go today and you get to go tomorrow. There is a process in place that happens for every student, regardless of how they are assigned there or transition or transferred there. There's a process for every student to return to his or her home school. And to conclude that, back to what I heard Dr. Ross say, no student who does go to an academy anywhere by design goes there to stay. For an interim period, yes, but not to make that their home school until graduation. That is not the point of an academy in any case or any school district.
In fairness to the board, I think we need to have other people with questions. And Mr. Lovelace, I will recognize you, but I did want to ask Ms. Gardner, because we don't get, now I see them, Ms. Gardner and Ms. Moore, if they had a question, since y'all are.
I had a question.
Ms. Moore, please.
So it's been my understanding, and I had this conversation with Dr. Ross, that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to the wording that we have in our code of conduct policy. So in our code of conduct, it states that at your fifth warning or your fifth offense, then you're put up for expulsion. And it's my clear understanding that we're actually not expelling a child. We're then transferring them to the academy, to which then they only spend a semester. And there's no real rhyme or reason on the semester at hand, because it's not apples to apples, it's more apples to bananas. So whenever you enter the semester, you're just there for that semester, and then you go back to your returning school. Is that correct? Because I think that's where parents get really confused, because they're thinking that, okay, this child has done X, Y, or Z, and now they're no longer at this school. And then in a semester later, they're showing back up, and they're like, but wait a minute, it's not really an expulsion, it's a transfer.
Okay, you want Dr. Harris to answer it? Okay, Dr. Harris.
And I appreciate the question. Are there students who, for one reason or another, are assigned to the Academy for Success for a semester? Yes. Are there students who are assigned to the Academy for the semester for the entire year? Yes. Are there students who are expelled and do not have an option to attend school anywhere? Yes. Are there students who are expelled and have to earn their way back through the academy in order to get to their home school? Yes. So there are a number of different ways and different avenues that we utilize the Academy for Success. It is not for any one student a given or written in the policy that a semester and a semester only is the only way or the only assignment that a student would have. There are various lengths of stays. No one student is there for the entire same period of time. There are various lengths of stays based on the reason, the rhyme and reason in which the student's been assigned. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity to this semester concept. The semester is there, quite frankly, because it's really a clean break. The end of the year is really a clean break. If we had students transitioning every 3 weeks in and out of school, you can only imagine how disruptive that would be. To not only the student and his or her learning, but also to either one of the schools themselves. So there is an opportunity for clean breaks that we've established semester, year-long, and so forth that assist us with that. And again, it gives student an opportunity to redirect and earn his or her way back, should that be the case, to their home school.
And in terms of the language, when we say expulsion or recommended for expulsion, the initial process is everyone is recommended, but you may go through an MDR or, I mean, how does that work?
That's correct. There is a recommendation which kind of starts the ball rolling. Then obviously that's the process of an expulsion hearing itself to weigh the merits of the case, weigh whether it's a violation, a clear violation of the code of conduct, or whether there are options or interventions that could have been or should have been meted out to the student. Are there other ways in which to look at that? Is this student a special needs student? Does the student have a 504 plan? Are there various and sundry things that you have to take a look at that will predetermine or help determine whether or not an assignment to the academy, an expulsion, or a return to school is appropriate for a particular student?
I have a question.
Mr. Lovelace.
Dr. Ross, I know this, I think, because I attended the Academy for Success as a guest speaker, and I went to classes there several years ago, and I think it's still this way. But I believe the Academy for Success is a school of choice, is it not?
It is a school of choice, yes, sir.
So, you know, when we talk about release of people from something that was their choice to be there, I think that's pretty much a misnomer. And I think, you know, we need to look at this in a different light than because there are students that prefer to be there because it's a smaller environment and they feel safe and they can be mentored by their teachers. And I just wanted to point that out because it hurts me to hear, you know, somebody say that like they're released from there, like they're released from prison or something. And that hurts my feelings after having been over there and seen this. So.
Well, I ask anyone to meet with Ms. Patrice Brand and just see the program they're running. One of my first videos that we did this year was at the Academy for Success, and it was the circle video. That's one of the strategies we like to put in the nest, is that before every class, you circle up and just talk about, there were things that happened at night. One of the issues we were dealing with, we had investigators on campus investigating something that happened in the community. What they bring on Monday, and we'll see Mondays are tough days because a lot of things that are in the community are showing up in school and are not being resolved. And so when do they get resolved? They get resolved at class change. If you have an opportunity where you set up spaces and places for the students to resolve those issues, again, discipline means to teach. And I was told Mike Satterfield was the principal that brought me to Chapin High School, and he said if they have not learned from the behavior, then it is not discipline. Discipline changes the behavior. And when you constantly see the same behaviors, we need to do a new discipline piece. So you're right. Not every student is over there because of, I don't believe in bad children. I believe in bad circumstances. But a lot of students go there and they see success for the first time. And what Ms. Brand is doing with her team, I think is a model for our state.
Ms. Huddle, you've not had a chance to speak.
Dr. Ross, I too got questions about, well, if you have the Academy for Success, why do you need the nest at Irmo? And so I want to try to paraphrase what I understand, and then you can correct me. Would that be all right?
That'd be perfect.
So we're still following the Code of Conduct.
Yes.
And there are, while Academy for Success is a school of choice, there also are some students who are sent there either by the administration at their school or sometimes by court. Is that correct or not? No?
Thank you. They are not sent by the court, no. Are there students who may have court-related matters that we believe in our best educated judgment are best suited prior to going to their home school to start at the academy? Yes.
Okay.
If that's what you're saying, then that's
Okay,
correct, yes.
thank you for clarifying. But where I was headed at is, so you've got Irmo or Dutch Fork or Chapin where there's rules, but there's a lot of kids and, you know, they're pretty much just, you know, there's that, and then you have the very high structure of the Academy Success. So what you all are trying to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is bridge that. So that if you have a child that's coming back, they have a place to go to kind of intermediate structure before they get in same way the other direction maybe is if you see a kid that's on the path, and let's give them some more structure and get them back into the regular environment. Is that right?
That's exactly right. One of the things that I think is important to note, and you know, you can talk to those on the front line, those teachers. We see this at Irmo Middle School. Right? The amount of students who are in that orange, that unmet group is grown. And so as administrators are dealing with the students who are in crisis in red, you have this group that's about to get that way. And to not have a place and space for them. We can't put, 60 students from one school at the academy to get those services. We just don't have enough space. But we can create that with their school. I think one thing that we have to understand is if those students are in the public, meaning the court systems say that they belong in the community. They may be on ACOM monitors or whatever, but if the courts say that they belong in the community and they're under the compulsory attendance, they come to school. And we meet them as they are. As public schools, we take all. And so this nest idea is a way to meet all, to meet these very unique needs. I was made aware of something that really touched me, and it's just an example of what we're dealing with. Sheriff Lott told me, he said, ask your teachers if they know Bathtub Children. said, what are Bathtub Children? He said, these are kids who sleep in the bathtub, meaning that every night their parents put a blanket and a pillow in the tub, and that's where that child sleeps, because that's the safest place to be, because of bullets coming through the apartment walls. And says that child wakes up and they come to your school, and what's the first thing that they're met with? That's just an example of just some of the insecurities and some of the issues that have to be resolved before we can actually get to learning. What the Nest will do is just a place and a space. It's not for bad children, it's for children who just need those needs met. And I would like to see this team try it. I would like to see them do what they told me on Friday afternoon. They said, we got this. And we want to give them that space and place to meet those needs. So that's exactly right. Before being recommended for expulsion, before being suspended, and when returning back, you have that nurturing environment. Right now, it's really 9th and 10th graders, mainly 9th graders. You think about these 9th graders, the last normal year, they've never known what high school is. Last normal year, somebody walked them to the bathroom. No one does that in high school. Someone walked them to the cafeteria. No one's doing that for them in high school. So this is a great way to teach and meet needs.
Any other questions? For the sake of time, I just want to be sure everybody had a chance to speak. Only Ms. Gardner and Mr. Hogan, if you have anything to say, I'm going to move forward. I do know, and I can tell you this as a teacher, there's legal criteria for students to be sent to the alternative school. There's limited space. So I think, as Ms. Huddle put it adequately, this is sort of somewhere in between. But what I do hope, I hope we've made the message, and I think maybe this is what the fear of some parents is. These kids that are there in this school within a school, they still are held to a standard of behavior that is acceptable to be a safe environment for all our children. And they would have, it's not like they aren't going to have consequences. They have those same rules to follow, right, Dr. Ross?
Firm and fair.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate you taking all that time to go over that.
No problem.
Now, Ms. Gardner, I wanted to be sure, did you want to say anything? You're the only one I not asked, or I did ask, but I didn't hear you say anything. Would you like to speak to
Yeah,
this?
I would just like to reiterate that I appreciate that Dr. Ross understands that we can't give up on these children, and I'm grateful that he's coming up with a plan. And I do recognize, too, that it may not be a perfect plan, but it is one that everyone at the high school can get behind. And me as a school board member, if I can be supportive in any way, I will do that, too. And that's the only thing. I just wanted to ask one more question, maybe about how you felt that this was related to the fact that maybe a lot of these students used to be virtual, and so they're not used to a school environment, and this will help them be more integrated in a school environment.
The question about considering virtual, we feel that for a lot of students, 5 Academy, it's amazing what Dr. Blunt is doing. But for some of our students, they really need that face-to-face, and they need to work out social interaction. Social skills are just important. The volume in which you speak. I mean, we've seen that here. How do you handle when you're frustrated? Not to lash out, to speak, to talk out your feelings. So what's amazing is that we have people that want to work with those students on those skills while they're in this. And I go back to Ms. Hines' questions about staffing. Like, where's all this money coming from? So we're very blessed to be in ESSER right now, to have these clinical counselors that are lined up that's coming from ESSER. I want to thank Marty Rawls. I asked her to expand whatever inches we had in the budget to give me 4 FTEs so that we can get this. What I did not understand how, and Melanie Cohen needs one of those buttons over there, but she found a math and science teacher on a Saturday. And we had also people emailing us, and I think this is important, to say, how can I help? And I think that was really cool. And so we had one teacher said, I can't teach calculus, but how can I help? I said, I think we got you covered. So we have within our existing budget approved up to 4 additional FTEs within the existing budget without going over. And so that is to staff this without interrupting the bell schedules and the schedules of the other students at Irmo High. We will go back and look at retooling this and rebuilding this under next year's budget. I think Irmo Middle School could benefit from one of these programs as well. We will see that we may see something work we don't really talk about it, but Dutch Fork High School could benefit from a program like this. So we don't know if we can afford to put it at all schools, but I think where we find these high concentrations of needs, we need to consider that.
Okay.
All right, so I need to
Move
move on with
forward.
the
Yeah,
rest. Yeah,
I know,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry,
be
and-
here all night.
And that just
Can you
came
put the
up.
presentation up? I was corrected. We have Van Holden here, who is our resident historian, and he's already checked with the State Department of Education. This picture is certified to be 1932. The class of 1932, is that correct? Okay. Okay. So that makes 90 years. This year will be 90 years of Irmo High School graduates. So we want to move on as we talk about COVID-19, and Madam Chair, we'll move quickly through the superintendent's report to get to our business of the day. Test to Stay was a program that was updated February the 1st by DHEC. It has always been within the guidelines, but not as a isolated recommendation within there. And so as a result, we met with Dr. Traxler, the superintendent, on Thursday of last week, talked about the options. This will drastically cut down on quarantining. We asked because COVID changes, the COVID guidance has been changing more rapidly, and our nurses, God bless their heart, have struggled to kind of keep up with this guidance. So Dr. Harris had made a promise to them that we would wait 5 days before we would implement any of these changes, and I certainly support that. Tomorrow would be day 5, and so we wanted to bring this to you where there's not need approval, but just so that you're aware of the test to stay options in our district starting tomorrow. And while we are not going to be doing the testing, this is an option for parents. It drastically reduces the quarantines. Again, isolations will always be in effect, but this drastically reduces the quarantines. We do have on the way, and we'll have to look at operationally how we to deploy it. But Dr. Harris, we have about how many tests that are coming?
We've been fortunate to be notified, in fact, on Friday of this past week, that we will receive 17,245 test to stay kits that we will be distributed and dispersed to our students to be administered at home, as you mentioned.
So that's equivalent to 1 test per child, almost, about.
Actually, each kit allows 2 tests. If
wow.
I think I said that correctly. Am I correct? Each kit allows 2 tests. So that's tremendous, I think, for the opportunity to test at home to determine a sooner opportunity to return to school.
Thank you. Mr. Holden, would like to give our COVID update, please?
Second here. It is going. As you know, the cases from our last report have dropped in the community. Dr. Ross mentioned earlier the relationship between the community and the schools, and as we've seen with COVID throughout the pandemic, as cases increase in the community, so do cases in our schools, and as they come down, we see the same trend. We did not have a DHEC update for one of our previous weeks. That was the first time in my knowledge they've actually not been able to produce their 2-week incidence report or recent disease activity report. So there is a gap there of 1 week, but you can see where we were with the peak of Omicron so far and where we were on last Thursday in the 2-week incidence rate. Of course, this is not the only measure that determines the overall risk level for the 2 counties, but it is one of the key measures. Now, when we saw the drop from 2 weeks ago to last week, what that led to was the second measure, which is the spread or the trend in the incidence rate. That led to that decreasing, which is a low risk for the 2 counties. And then that combined with the percent positive. And what that did overall was with a high 2-week incidence rate, the low trend in the incidence rate, and the high percent positive, that led to both Lexington and Richland counties dropping to a medium risk level. And when the 2 counties are at a medium risk level, what that does is that moves our mitigation levels in the schools. So this week we have several schools that are operating at a yellow mitigation level. Some schools are operating at an orange mitigation level. Of course, we know that's a reflection of where their percent of students or staff who were impacted were during the previous 5-day interval. We're continuing to monitor that. We do not know yet, of course, what next week will show. Where will that 2-week incidence rate go? Will that slope of that line steady off there? Will it continue to drop at a dramatic rate, or will it increase again? We'll be monitoring that piece again to determine where we'll be, and then of course that will inform the remainder of the measures DHEC uses to calculate the risk levels for the counties, and that will then inform our mitigation levels as well. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. I certainly appreciate that. We are in the season that we're out and we're recruiting teachers, and you'll know that there is the pool is very shallow. We have more people leaving the profession than are coming in, so we have to be very aggressive. And so we thank the board for the endorsement of our NARI program. We believe that not only will it draw new teachers to our district, I think it will keep our existing teachers. So I wanted just a few highlights. Dr. Turner, if you would like to share what you and your team are doing in terms of teacher recruitment to update the board and the community, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. We had our district recruitment event on January 8th. Since that time, we currently have 326 certified applicants in our pool as of Friday, February 4th. These are applicants interested in positions with District 5 for the 22-23 school year. We've attended 13 in-person or virtual recruitment events. These are hosted at local colleges, universities, and conferences. Our principals have participated with our lead district recruiter, Ms. Melanie Cohen, and they've attended 15 virtual D5 recruitment events. These are opportunities for candidates to actually engage with our principals. Additionally, each school this year is hosting open houses where they're inviting candidates to come in. Positive feedback with that, at least 10 schools have hosted those school-level recruitments. That provides an opportunity for candidates to find just the right fit at our schools. We've also received positive feedback when it comes to the recruitment of our support positions. The $50 Friday has been an incentive for those to attract candidates to apply for support. And lastly, regarding retention efforts, the Office of Human Resources has personally reached out to all 96 current D5 teachers who would qualify for NARI if they remained in D5 next year. And I'd like to recognize Ms. Melanie Cohen, again, our lead recruiter, for personally reaching out to make sure that our educators know that we are working to retain them. And finally, the transfer window is open. As a retention effort, there are many employees who seek different placements within District 5. They would like to stay with district, but find a different opportunity, a different school location. That window is open, and we have 106 employees with 314 different requests. They give us multiple options. So as vacancies become available in our district for both certified and support, we're also not forgetting to recruit and engage our current employees for different opportunities that they may be interested in. Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. And Marta would like to give a few updates on our ESSER and where we are in terms of ESSER spending.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ross. Our website has a wealth of information on it. A couple of updates that I'd like to let you all know is that our ESSER 1 funds are, we received $1,629,882, and all of that has been spent. In our ESSER 2 allotment of $6,651,000, we have spent $1,476,000 of that. And in ESSER 3, we received a little over $15 million, and we have spent right at $900,000. The majority of ESSER 3 has been used in the learning loss category. We've done a lot with our COVID student support teams, done a lot with tutoring, so that's a wonderful opportunity. The numbers look like they are low, but remember, we have not done many of our facility projects yet, which would be the large dollar value expenditures. So in all, we received over $23 million in ESSER funds to support the district through all the COVID related issues. So I think that we were certainly set up for success with that, and we are using the funds to make long-term differences. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I do try to update the reports on here quarterly, so they are updated as of December 31st.
Thank you. Any questions on the ESSER fund? Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I wanted to return to policy, our board policy KEC, after our last board meeting concerning instructional materials or public concerns and complaints about instructional materials. And in my talk about a specific book, I said I asked for that book to be pulled. And I wanted to publicly apologize because I was not supposed to ask for any book to be pulled without it going through this policy first. And so I'm glad that my staff did not pull it because they saved their superintendent from violating the First Amendment rights of the author. Under the Island Trees School District versus Pico Supreme Court decision, cannot remove a book because of you disagree with or dislike the ideas contained therein. However, there is a process, and that process is that any parent or citizen can complete a citizen's request for review of educational materials. And there is a school committee that reviews that and a district committee that reviews that. We've had members of the community ask for books to be removed. The ones that I received, I sent them this information. And when those requests come in, we will go through that process. The South Carolina Libraries Association wrote us a letter, and in that letter they did say that parents do have the right to direct their child's reading, but they do not have the right to direct another child. So one of the things that we began to look at is if books come and arise through this process, that we do have the ability to have each book with a tag, meaning that on our system before they're checked out, that a parent is aware. And that parent acknowledges that their child is attempting to check out a challenged book. It doesn't leave the shelf, but then the parent has, in our district, would be aware if the child wants that book or not. So we're in the process of developing that and working with legal counsel on how to do that. I don't know if any schools are doing that in the area. So I just wanted to be very clear on what this was about. But in doing all of this research, this really took about a good week of digging in. addressing one book in one library that was checked out by one student for less than 1 minute. I began to think about what the Lexile level was of that book, the reading level of that book. And that book is reading level at sixth grade, 8th month. I am currently, we're working to get 55 students at that school across the stage on time for graduation. And the reading levels of those 55 students, the average reading level is sixth grade, 2nd month, meaning that they would even struggle to read this book that one student had for less than 1 minute. And so it was very clear that for us, I want to return the administration, maybe the board and community's attention to, I think, what really is important, and that's the literacy rates of our students. We asked, how are the children? This is our winter map testing information. Meets is and exceeds expectation on our SC Ready is where we want all students to be. Right now, if you look at the students who do not meet and approach being able to be on grade level for SC Ready in 2nd through 5th grade, it's about 60% of the students are not on track. You look at 6th through 8th, it's 63% of the students. If we look at our differentials between fall and winter, while we made some gains in some areas, you can see that the number of students who do not meet expectation is growing from fall to winter. And so we have a lot of work to do, and I want to return our attention to all the things that we can do to make sure that these children are able to read any book that's in our library. And we want them on grade level. So I've asked that our administration, our school principals, community members, encourage children to read at least 20 minutes a day, wherever you meet them, whatever level of influence they are. And we find that students that read 20 minutes a day gain about 1.8 million words a year, and on average score in the 90th percentile on standardized tests. It's not about the standardized test, though. It's about what the research says about a student who is able to understand and produce language at their grade level, their life outcomes, less likely to be in the prison system, less likely to be in using public assistance, higher, longer life expectancy. So literacy is life. The students that we're addressing in our programs, this is a common factor that we find, the ability not being able to read on grade level. So we want to point our attention there. We know that to meet that, we got to fill some gaps. And, you know, the physical health gaps, the mental health gaps, the academic readiness gaps. And so I believe that by returning to this will be my #1 priority, providing this umbrella. That's what the NEST does. It's an example of providing this umbrella around our students, especially those with the highest needs, so that they can be successful. I'll leave with this as I move through. An example of providing those supports was our First Job initiative that was featured on the news. So we do get good news, and we thank those. We want to thank our own HR director, Dr. Turner, for her cameo and supporting the First Jobs. But there are great things that are going on. And last, and I'll end with this, Madam Chair. This has been a long superintendent's report, but we had a lot to cover. The student advisory has been watching these proceedings, and they said, Dr. Ross, you haven't lifted our voices. And so this is a report from the student advisory to the community and to the board. And they said, Dr. Ross, there's a few areas that we want you to focus on. So I have to get back. I can tell you I didn't do everything they asked on the list, but we're working on it. The first one they asked was about mental health. Student advisory composes of the student governments for all of our high schools and the center, correct? And they said that they reported that they need to have a mental health services prior to incidences and tragedies. They want to build relationships with these professionals before they need them so that they can work through issues. They talked about choice and providing transportation, like a shuttle from one part of the district to the other to promote choice. A big thing was hotspots in the buildings for increased Wi-Fi. I think Mr. Beatonbow has been working on solutions on that. Consistency in COVID mitigation protocols for all schools. The 5-day waiting period before we addressed or made a change really helps with that. And then school counseling, that our best practices at one high school are shared at all of the high schools so that they would be informed of those things. And so that's one of the reasons we will be asking for a lead counselor, because we believe that could help in these efficiencies. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the community, again, I'll say that our priority is providing for the whole child in that continuum so that all of our students will be successful. And so I promise not to make the next superintendent's report that long, but I think it was important to cover these topics, and I stand for questions.
We appreciate it. I wanted to ask you about, with the process that you've explained to us about the books, who decides on the books that are in our media centers? That's what I'd like to know. You know, how they get there. I follow the, you know, that you just can't take them out, but how do they get there?
I want to ask Ms. Miller, our Chief of Academics and Administration, to answer.
Sure. So our librarians select the texts that are in there, but it's based on, you know, our librarians are highly competent professionals who have been trained in book selections. They seek out resources on lists like the school library journal and other lists like that, award-winning books who have been on like Caldecott winners or things of that nature list. They consider the age level of the students. They consider the interest of the students. They can get recommendations from teachers, from parents, from students, from reading coaches. So there are a lot of ways that they go through, but the books are vetted through that process that is recommended by the State Department of Education and is in their model policy.
Well, Ms. Miller, does every high school or every middle school within the state have the same books?
No, ma'am, because
Okay.
part of that is based on student interest, needs, and requests.
Okay, that was just part of my understanding. Yes, I'll go that way. Mr. Hogan. No, come.
Dr. Ross, going back about an hour and a half ago to the DHEC changes in the quarantine guidelines, looking at it as of today, 480 students in quarantine. We've got another 23 staff members in quarantine. With this going into effect, what does that look like for these individuals? Are they able to return, or do they have to wait out the 5 days because of when they left, they were on the quarantine?
Nurse Stanek, you want to address that question?
Sure. Good evening. The ones that are already in quarantine, we're going to have them finish out their quarantine and then start with the new. Operationally, that would be very difficult to try to go backwards on that. Thank goodness now the quarantine has been shortened to 5 days, so hopefully a lot of those are on day 3 or day 4, and we're getting close. So that's how we will handle that.
Before I get Ms. Hines, was that it, Mr. Hogan? Anything else? Okay, Ms. Hines.
You need to think, understand. Ms. Miller touched on a comment that I was going to ask and just say this is not a gotcha moment. I've been doing my own research as well, and I saw that after our last board meeting, the State Department of Education put out a memo with a new best practice model policy on this exact policy with some updated guidelines based on grade level. It's just, it's changed around. It's a little bit more clear on what the requirements are from the library standpoint. And then also, it's a little bit more clear on who sits on those school level and district level committees. And it identifies that a community member and a parent and different folks within the school sit on that. And this is brand new information. I saw this in the last 48 hours. So I mean, the reason I'm bringing that up is that may be something that we would want to take to the policy committee, especially with all of the questions around this, because this particular policy is older. And I think that it would probably be appropriate to update it with the more current information. And then also just a general statement on the ability to, you don't want to take a book out of the library because you don't agree with what it says. I totally understand that. I think that the question that we've had is what constitutes obscenity. And that was one of those things that was brought up with those books. And we obviously didn't want them to be, we redacted the video for YouTube because of, it was inappropriate. So I just think that maybe that's something that we think about as, we draft a policy or that we talk to administration, what the difference is. There's a difference between obscenity and not agreeing with, disagreeing with what is in a book. So I just want to throw that out there, and I appreciate.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Ms. Huddle.
I have a question on the test to stay as well, just trying to understand the mechanics of it. So let's say you've got just an example, first grade class, and 6 children are identified as being close contacts. So the way I understand it is right now, we'll let those kids stay in school the rest of the day, ride the bus home, because I get parents who are like, I don't get it. If, why are they allowed to stay all day and ride the bus home? But they stay, and I guess if DHEC lets us do it, ride the bus home, and then the parent is supposed to give an at-home test, and then do they take a picture of it, or how do they get that child back in school the very next day?
So the way that it will work is they will be allowed to continue to come to school as long as they are symptom-free. So that's the main thing. If they have symptoms, it's a whole different track, so we would be doing something different. But if they remain symptom-free, they can come back to the school the next day and the next day. And on day 5 or later, they would need to take a test. And they can do that with an at-home test that we're waiting to receive, about 17,000 of those. They can use one of our at-home tests. If they do that, there is a DHEC attestation, I can't say it, but there's a form from DHEC, and they would complete it, and it's very specific. So you can't really just take a picture of a negative. You need to provide the lot number and the time, and it's a very specific form that needs to be filled out correctly. If it is negative and they provide that form, that is their proof for them to come back and remain at school. If it's positive, then they're on the positive track and we do different things. They will also have the option to go to a DHEC site or to a CVS or Walgreens, something like that. They don't have to use our test. It does need to be a rapid test, though, because we need to have it back before day 7.
Is that clear, Ms. Huddle? Okay. That was a good question for parents. Thank you for that superintendent's report.